Thank you so very much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dionne Jackson-Miller, and in today's program we have a special one-on-one interview with Police Commissioner Owen Ellington. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your coming in. Mr. Ellington, one of the big items that's been in the news recently, of course, has been the cartel trial involving Vybz Kartel, Adidja and the other men who were tried and convicted along with him. The High Command, I beg your pardon, had issued a statement after the sentencing in which the police said, among other things, as the trial progressed, opportunities were presented for the police to assess the soundness of techniques and procedures used in handling digital evidence. And significant steps are already underway to improve certain procedures in this area. Isn't that, though, kind of glossing over one of the major concerns which came out in the trial, in that chain of custody issues, how physical evidence is secured and prevented from tampering? Isn't that the real issue, not so much a digital evidence, which might be a separate issue?
Yeah, and I think what we need to bear in mind is that nothing was wrong with any of the evidence presented. It was good evidence that was presented at the trial. What came into question was the handling of certain aspects of the evidence and our procedures. And therefore, like any learning organization, if you have a very important trial as this one, with the degree of public interest and publicity that it got, you would be monitoring the trial through all its stages. And wherever there were questions about procedures, you would look to see if you are, doing as best as you could possibly do. And if there are opportunities for improvement, then you exploit those opportunities. So it's not an admission of failure, or it's not an admission of, damage to evidence. It is just simply saying we are a learning organization and we will always explore opportunities to improve on our techniques. Absolutely
understand that, Commissioner, but isn't what you're talking about there, in terms of, as you said, the handling, isn't that basic? I mean, for instance, don't you already have policies and procedures established as to what is supposed to happen if you take, say, a wallet, a gun, whatever it is, from a crime scene, how it is kept, how it is stored until the time when it is entered into court as an exhibit? You have procedures in place, correct? Already?
Yes.
And have had for probably since
years, ever since we started handling evidence. And those procedures were followed. Let's take the issues which arose. There was one around disappearance of a disc, a compact disc, which was attributed to the police. That was not true, and we actually went public at some stage in the trial to say that was not the case. And even if a disc went missing, it did not compromise evidence because the discs were all generated at the same time. One which should have been kept as a control disc, so to speak, that was in the possession, I think, of a prosecutor who, died, unfortunately. And so we could not retrieve it. But whatever was retained and presented in evidence was credible evidence. It was not tampered with. It could not have been tampered with. And therefore, there's no issue around that. The second one had to do with the allegations that a telephone, a cellular phone, which was in the custody of the police, was used to make calls. The call data, which was extracted in relation to this phone, showed that the length of the so-called call was 6 seconds. Anyone who owns a smartphone will know that in the handling of that phone, you can inadvertently dial off a number which is already on the phone. And that is the explanation which has been given to me as to what occurred. It wasn't as if the phone was being used to make calls, and then those calls were tendered into evidence to implicate the accused. Nothing of the sort.
But you see, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about what you call the handling, because what came out before the court is that the phone, for instance, was placed in a locker, the key for the locker placed on top of the locker, not secured, that other persons could have access. And that is the question that people are asking. So when you say those procedures were followed, are you really saying that that particular action would have been in accordance with police procedures?
There would be. If you have a locker where you store exhibit, chances are you will have more than one individual accessing that locker in order to examine the exhibit or do analysis of the exhibit. In this particular case, my understanding is that the sergeant who gave evidence said the items were locked away, the keys were placed on the locker. I don't know if they were placed on the locker with an arrow pointing to it, or if they were placed in an envelope or a box on the locker where only persons who had legitimate access to it knew that it was there and therefore could access it. It is not like the key was placed in a position where any member of the public could walk into the office and take the key and open the cabinet and get access to the device. However, we now see the danger in that practice, and therefore that will not happen again. In fact, we have actually taken steps to ensure that we have the kind of access control to those sensitive digital evidence where not one individual, but at least two would have to collaborate to open the safe to get to that evidence. But the point I want to reiterate is that nothing was done to the evidence. The evidence was not compromised. And therefore, what we need to do is to review our access control procedures to ensure that questions like these can never be raised again in another trial.
With respect, Commissioner, it cannot be, with respect, that you're saying the police are only now seeing the danger of that kind of procedure, with nothing in terms of to indicate who would have accessed, no signing mechanism. You're saying, bearing in mind the questions which are now being asked, you're now going to review that and improve the procedures. But as I said, it sounds pretty basic that should have been in place before.
But there are audit trails in place, to document who accessed the device, who used it, who analyzed it. All of that is in place. The issue arose out of a suggestion that the phone was being used by unauthorized persons. That
which
could not
raised a broader question for members of the public, which is what I'm asking you. Let me back up a little bit.
Yes.
Tell me what's supposed to happen. And let's use something different. You pick up a wallet.
Yes.
Or a gun no, not gun. Let's say wallet. What's supposed to happen?
It is entered into what we call a general property book and an exhibit register. And if it is property belonging to an accused in custody, it is registered in what is also called a charged and prisoner's property book. The owner of it is also required to sign. It is stored in what we call an exhibit store at police station, and each police station has a sub-officer in charge of exhibits. That is the person who has access to the exhibit from time to time, and he hands it over to individuals who may wish to take it to court, and when they bring it back, it has to be logged in and it is locked away again. What we're talking about here is a situation where we had
that sounds like what we would have expected.
Yes, but we're talking about a situation where we have digital devices which were secured, which were passed on to a lab, and there are persons in the lab who have access to it in order to extract data from it and do analysis. This is completely different from somebody who is handling an exhibit key for an exhibit store, because the lab functions 24/7. Now, what we're saying that because of these revelations and these accusations of the police tampering with the phone, we are going to apply the same stringent measures which are applied in dealing with exhibits such as guns or drugs to preserve the integrity of chain of custody of these kinds of exhibits going forward.
And before I leave this, and I know I'm asking the same question over and over, but it's as if I don't know, I don't seem to be asking it correctly. And I'm asking, why though wouldn't you have felt the need to have those secure procedures that you just described in place for something like a cell phone?
Because you are dealing with a group of highly vetted individuals who are working in a lab environment, who must have access to the device during the course of their work. And they had procedures in place which, to their satisfaction, were adequate to preserve the integrity of the device. And there is nothing which has been presented by anyone to show that the evidence was compromised. So, now that it has become a public issue, now that it has become an issue where questions are being asked around chain of custody in relation to this particular type of evidence, we are going to apply more stringent control measures.
Does that mean then, that as far as you and the High Command would be concerned, there is no issue, is it that there is no issue in your mind here of any kind of matter that would require a disciplinary procedure?
Absolutely not. No.
Absolutely not?
No. The police officers who handled the investigation of this case, and in particular those who extracted the data from the digital devices, did the analysis and presented evidence in court, should be commended with every opportunity, not condemned.
Despite having fallen down in this area?
They haven't fallen down. They have not fallen down.
Continue to assert that?
I continue to assert that nothing was done which compromised the quality of evidence. On reflection, because of the issues generated about how this particular bit of evidence was handled, we are tightening up on our control procedures. And this is something that any learning organization would do, whether or not you have a problem.
Okay, I'm not going to try to second guess what might happen later up the chain, so I'll leave that there, except to ask you, though, that if this was a very high-profile case, everyone involved would have known that there would have been close scrutiny by the public, by the media. So is it that if this happens in a case like this, and as you said, leading to concerns that things need to be tightened up, is it then that other cases which are not in the public domain, in such as this, that we're seeing similar incidents?
No, as I said before, our procedures are, long respected procedures which have served us well. In this particular case, questions were raised by the defense. Our procedures stood up to the test of challenge from the defense.
All right.
Bottom line is the evidence was not compromised.
All right, I'm going to leave it there.
Going forward, like any learning organization, we will re-examine, and we have done that, and we have put measures in place to ensure that these questions can never be raised again.
We're at break, so let's go to break. We're talking to Police Commissioner Owen Ellington. Do stay with us. We're back in just a moment.
Jamaican.
We thank you so very much for staying with us. All Angles continues. We are talking with Police Commissioner Owen Ellington. Now, we went to some members of the public to get your views or your questions for the Commissioner. So let's go to our first question. We have Jermaine on Facebook. Jermaine Ferguson is asking Mr. Commissioner, what actions have you taken to tackle this evil pestilence of extrajudicial killings from within the force?
Thank you. We regard killings committed by the police in the course of their duty as justifiable homicides. We do not regard those killings as extrajudicial killings. We regret every instance in which a citizen is killed or injured by members of the security forces, and so we train our men as best as we can. We provide them with all the equipment needed to ensure that they can have safe encounters with citizens. We publicly commend and applaud them whenever they can make armed arrest without any injury or death to civilians. And we investigate every instance in which killings are done by the police. We now have Indicom, which does those investigations on behalf of the country. And we give full support and cooperation to Indicom in all investigations they are carrying out, where our members use deadly force of one type or the other. In the years that I've been Commissioner of Police, we have seen declines in killings at the hands of the police. There's just 1 year when we had an increase over a previous year. Year to date, we are down about 50% on killings committed by the police when compared to the figures last year. We continue to remind the public and criminal elements who challenge us with gunfire that as long as they do not endanger the lives of our members, there is no risk of them being injured or killed. It seems to me that some criminal elements are getting the message now, because we have seen less attacks on the police in recent times. We haven't had any policeman killed in the line of duty since the start of the year. We used to average over 15 members being murdered in the line of duty each year. We have had years in recent times when none has been killed in the line of duty. So our view is that as criminal elements get the message that it's not a worthwhile undertaking to attack our members with gunfire, we will see less attack on the police, and we will see the police having to be called upon less frequently to defend themselves in gunfights. That is the key to reducing fatal encounters between the police and citizens.
Unless they engage the police, there's no risk of them being killed. Can you honestly still say that today?
Can I honestly say, could you repeat that?
That there's no risk of them being killed, people being killed. You're saying unless they're engaging, unless they're attacking, unless they're...
We can't shoot at anyone unless they're endangering our lives. And to do otherwise would be unlawful.
That's your policy.
That's the policy, that's the practice. And when it is done, and it is done unlawfully, it's investigated, and people are charged. And we have investigations going now within the COM where there are allegations that the police used deadly force without justification. Those investigations were actually started by the police on my instructions.
No, but that's the very point.
Turned.
That's the very point, though, because on one hand you assert that there's no risk of being killed unless they're engaging the police. But then you make reference to the very investigation, which has startled so many people. Because all throughout the years, you've had people saying you have police killing with impunity. We do understand, Mr. Commissioner, the issue of justifiable homicides. And that is in a separate category. But do you acknowledge now, given the very investigations you just referred to, that there is a broader, very serious issue which strikes at the very heart of what it is the police are about, to serve, to protect, to reassure?
My position is that the police can and should only use deadly force when there is lawful justification. The policy on use of force supports that position. Where a member uses force outside of the policy and outside of the law, that is criminal. The member may claim that there was justification for it, but an investigation will bring out the truth. And we've had instances where members, and this is even before INDICOM, have used force and claimed that it was justified and necessary. But subsequent investigations have found it to be unlawful, and they have been dealt with according to law. We have some cases now which are under investigations, and the chips will fall where they may. Because as long as people step outside of the law and operate outside of policy, they're acting on their own. But the point I wish to make and reinforce is that killings done by the police in the course of duty are referred to as justifiable homicides, notwithstanding that every single case is investigated thoroughly and completely. And we are now at a stage where those investigations are being done by INDICOM, which is independent of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. And INDICOM operates with the full backing, the full support, the full cooperation of the police force.
But are you concerned that despite your best efforts, despite your policy, despite the use of force policy, that you have a specific problem within the force, not with one or two rogue individuals, but that the rot goes deeper, the problem goes wider in terms of unlawful killings by police?
I am concerned about any suspicion or confirmation of unlawful action on the part of any member of the force.
You think there is a systematic problem?
I don't think it's a systematic problem. The police force is staffed by well over 12,000 sworn and unsworn people, who the vast majority of those individuals are professional, committed individuals who go out there every day putting their lives on the line to protect the citizens of Jamaica. Among this number, there are a few individuals who will break the law. Before INDICOM, we dealt with them. Since the advent of INDICOM, we have an independent body with resources that can now investigate and deal with them. And I'm saying that that body operates with our full backing, cooperation, and support. And we want them to succeed for the benefit of Jamaica.
I think I meant systemic there, forgive me. But tell me how you feel, as the phrase we love to use, top cop. You're the head of the police force, you're a career policeman. Tell me how you felt, though, hearing INDICOM make a public statement about incidents, quote, first reported and believed to be homicides involving gunmen, later found to be police-involved fatalities. How did that make you feel as a career policeman?
INDICOM didn't know this before me. I actually initiated investigations, and our investigations were turned over to INDICOM.
So there was a red flag for you?
there was indeed a red flag, which I ordered investigations. I ordered the transfer of individuals, and those investigations were well advanced before Indicom made a public statement about it. I would not have made a public statement at the time they spoke because I didn't want to alert individuals on the possibility of an ongoing investigation. They have spoken. So I'm concerned, and I was before they spoke. I am very disturbed about some of the facts which have come out of particular investigations. But I'm also concerned about the morale of the hardworking men and women of the force, and in particular the Clarendon Division, who are now stigmatized by these allegations, much of which, we are nowhere near closure in terms of the investigations, but the men and the women continue to operate in a dangerous environment under a cloud of suspicion that they are involved in criminal wrongdoing. I am very anxious for Indicom's investigations to be completed as quickly as possible. And I'm very anxious for those matters that are before the courts to be tried and concluded as quickly as possible. Because I think only the truth about these matters will resolve the concerns which are not just in my mind, but I think in the minds of all well-thinking Jamaicans.
So you think Indicom made a mistake speaking out when they did?
I can't judge Indicom's communications tactic. All I'm saying is that as police commissioner, I time my communication because of certain considerations which I have. I do not know what drive their communication strategy.
All right, we're nearly at the break, so let's go to break. You're watching All Angles. We're talking to the police commissioner. We're back in a moment. We're back with you, continuing our interview with the Police Commissioner, Owen Ellington, and let's go to another of your questions to the Commissioner.
What are the steps taken to revise the Jamaican Constabulary Force in light of the recent image that the force has, especially when it comes to using excessive force on the citizens of Jamaica? And this is a really big issue, so it is something that I think that the Commissioner has to address.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
I actually think we answered that question before, but I'll just repeat for the benefit of
If I could, Joe, zeroing in on part of it that perhaps you didn't address that in as much detail in terms of the image issue. Because he's saying, and you can tell me if you agree, he's saying that you would have taken a hit, your image, your credibility, your integrity of how people see the force would have taken a hit. How do you recover?
I actually put out a statement following the Indicom press conference in which I made the point that these revelations are damaging to the image of the organization because we want to be promoting an image as a trusted and valued partner in nation building. So if you have this kind of allegations being made about the police force, then the only solution to that, the only way to resolve that is to have speedy, thorough investigations, find the truth, and deal with individuals if they have committed criminal wrongdoing. And if they haven't done anything wrong, come back out publicly and tell the public what your findings are.
Do you think, in the meantime, the force is under a cloud?
That's really more of what occurs in people's minds. There are many Jamaicans out there, I think the vast majority of Jamaicans, who still work with us every single day, partner with us. They know what we're about. We work in the public interest. There are others who have had, unfortunate experiences with the police, and it may take a long time to repair the feelings that they have about the police force. So I'm not here to say that everybody is entirely happy with how we are performing, but I don't go around, feeling that there's this cloud over the police force which is going to inhibit us in the performance of our duties. We have to continue doing what we have to do.
We saw, though, a column published by retired JDF Colonel Alan Douglas in which he said, we need a police force we can trust in Jamaica, a force that serves and protects. He says, would the Commissioner still maintain his earlier view that we can trust the force, which takes it out of the realm of someone's individual encounter with the police and goes back to the image issue, and which then goes back to that problem squarely in your lap. How do you disperse a cloud, or is it just that you're forced to live with it until whenever this whole investigation winds up?
It's not going to be this investigation alone, because there are so many other issues that people can raise, which goes to the root of public trust in the organization. But what are the facts? This organization recognizes that it has a trust deficit. This organization has been taking steps to reform itself. This organization has been out there publicly promoting anti-corruption, new professionalism. This organization subjects its members to the kind of screening and integrity tests, training, and rules and regulation, which is not replicated anywhere else in Jamaica.
So has all that been torpedoed now?
It hasn't been. In fact, it perhaps reminds us of the urgency with which we have to continue to promote all these new approaches to policing, to serving the public. And publicness is a part of it. We have to be open and frank with the public as well. So I've read Colonel Douglas's expressions in the newspaper, and I mean, the most I can say to him is that there are available data, research to show that the police force is improving in terms of its professionalization, in terms of image building, in terms of how it reaches out to the public. And he's a very good writer, but he could benefit from current research findings and where we're headed as an organization.
Saying he's out of touch?
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that if there's available information to enrich your expressions, take advantage of it.
Let's go to another question from a member of the public, another of our video questions from a member of the public who wanted to address an issue to Police Commissioner Ellington.
What they really have in place, so really put back confidence, security in the citizens of this country. Trust me, crime is really out of hand. And we're talking about even what's going on down in West Kingston. It's really alarming.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The truth of the matter is that the crime situation in Jamaica has been improving over the last 4 into the 5th year. It is the first time in our history since independence that we have been able to sustain significant reductions in crime.
Except numbers were back up last year, murders.
No, the murders went up slightly last year. Year to date, they are down again. All categories of major crimes are down. We are increasing our arrests for gang members. We are recovering more guns than ever before. We are seizing more drugs than ever before. We are doing exactly what is required to turn around the crime situation and to sustain it. The truth is that our crime rate was just too high. And even with the gains that we are making, it is still going to appear that we are overwhelmed by criminal activities until we get to a stage where crime is no longer such a major concern for the population. We publish our figures regularly, so it is clear for anyone to see that we are actually moving the right direction.
Which is why I'm wondering what you mean when you say murders went up slightly, because it was in the region of 9–10%, wasn't it?
It was 9% over the previous year.
Correct.
And the previous year was the lowest in 11 years.
But the concern was that the downward trend was reversed.
And that is something that you would see in any society which has marginal movements in crime figures, because it can go up. In Jamaica, we are dealing with organized crime and gangs, and one of the consequences of dealing with these kinds of actors in your space is that they can generate extraordinary levels of violence over very short periods. Let's take what has occurred in the country between January and the end of March. At the end of March this year, we were 14% below last year with murders. In 1 week, that was almost erased. Today, I think we are just about 8% below last year. Why? Because in 1 week, we had almost 30 murders. In one incident, 13 persons were shot. This is the work of criminal gangs, organized crime. And this is why we have always said to our fellow Jamaicans, do not get involved with with gangs. Do not get involved in organized crime. Tell the police what you know about organized crime. It was a bold and courageous individual who came forward as a witness and assisted us in building a strong case against Adidja, Vybz Kartel, securing conviction and getting him sent to prison along with some of his cronies. Vybz Kartel led a gang which was responsible for well over 100 murders. And we have been telling the country this for a long, long time. And every time that we moved against this gang, we were criticized, we were condemned, and we were accused of being, malicious against this individual. In fact, if you look at his defense, what was his defense? That there was a conspiracy on the part of the police to send this man to prison.
But when you make an assertion like that, the question is going to be, we're not seeing the charges. You obtain the conviction in relation, conviction was obtained in relation to this issue, but you just made a very broad statement for which we haven't seen charges to support.
Because organized crime does something else, which is to conceal their activities and to take steps to avoid detection. And even when their crimes are detected, what do? They engage in witness elimination, witness tampering, jury tampering, conspiracy theories, criminal activities to pervert the course of justice. And this is something that this police force that I lead has to deal with in Jamaica, because the rest of the country really doesn't understand and appreciate the clear and present danger that we face from gangs and organized crime. And until Jamaicans understand that whether a Vybz Kartel can sprinkle some dollars on the corner or not, if he's involved in wrongdoing, we must see wrongdoing for what it is, and we must support law enforcement in bringing to books those who are involved in criminal activities. Unless we get to that stage, we're going to have abnormal levels of crime.
I'm nearly at break, so let me just go to the break and then we'll come back in just a moment. You're watching All Angles. We're talking with the police commissioner. Back in a moment. Thank you so much for staying with us. All Angles continues as we continue our interview with Police Commissioner Owen Ellington. Let me just pick up, because there was an aspect of that question that member of the public asked Mr. Ellington that you didn't address, which is the West Kingston situation. And members of the public would have said, hold on, we had heard that the security forces operation in 2010 was a golden opportunity for you to really get hold of and control that area. Now, based on what we're seeing, it looks as if all those gains have been eroded.
They haven't been eroded. In fact, we are still benefiting from the impact of that operation, because it was the game changer. Remember, our violent crime rate was just spiraling, going in one direction for over 40 years.
To look like we're back in the same game now?
No, we're not. When we mounted that major operation in West Kingston, there are a convergence of a number of things. One of them, it was a very visible and decisive move against organized crime and gangs in Jamaica. The gang that we went after was the largest, most resourceful gang in the country. It was the center of influence for criminal activities committed by gangs. The gang controlled communities, as everybody saw. The gang was bold enough to challenge the authority of the state.
But let's fast forward, Mr. Commissioner.
The gang it provided the major hub for the distribution of illegal guns and ammunition going to the criminal underworld.
Understand, but let's fast forward in the interest of time. Because as you said, you had that game changer.
Right.
The security forces set up a post in the area.
Yes.
And yet we're now seeing the kind of violence we're seeing. Doesn't that suggest that the ball was dropped there somewhere?
It wasn't dropped. If it was dropped any at all, it was dropped by the rest of the population, because we had an opportunity to learn what could happen to a country that embraced criminality, that was sympathetic to criminality, that enjoyed the benefits of criminality. And those individuals are calling for the return of Christopher Cope. They all know how he made his money. They all know how many lives were lost in his criminal pursuits.
So you're saying there's no hope for us to keep an area crime-free? An area in which you had a game changer, in which security forces flooded the area, in which you moved in a permanent post?
There is hope by just simply looking at how the rest of Jamaica does it, where people respect the law, where people go out and work for what they want, where people support law enforcement, where people do not openly embrace gangsters and gangsterism, where people do not demand a return of a criminal, a convicted criminal, to the community
but
to
with
take
respect,
charge of their security.
That's not the issue here,
It is
though.
the issue.
No, the issue must be that the security forces had an opportunity here to get more than a toehold, to insert themselves and ensure that you maintain the tight grip on security issues, kept the crime under control. And it hasn't happened.
The security forces have not lost control of the Valley Gardens or West Kingston. Before that, it was a challenge going in there. There's nowhere in Jamaica now which is out of bounds to the security forces.
So you can go in, but you can't.
We can go in, we can patrol, we can do all that the police can do. But if citizens are unwilling...
Do you think the crime is under control there?
It's not under control. There's a lot more that needs to be achieved.
So shouldn't it be, given what you had in 2010?
It can only be achieved with the full support of citizens. If the citizens embrace law and order, and if the citizens turn away from gangs and gangsters and support law enforcement, we can make a difference. Not just in West Kingston, but everywhere across Jamaica. And that is what we're trying to promote. That's the essence of community policing. The citizens working in partnership with the police for safer communities.
Let me try getting a couple more questions from the public. Here's another question from one of our viewers to the police commissioner. And this one on Facebook, Kidan, I think that is on Facebook, say, I'm not seeing the benefits of a merger between the two groups, the JCF and the ISCF. Is there a reason, or is it too early to judge? I know you're on record as saying it's high time. This should have happened years ago. We hear it's going to happen in this fiscal year, and this member of the public is asking, well, what's the benefit?
The benefits are simply to achieve greater management and operational efficiencies as we abandon all the duplicated functions inherent in running two command structures, such as, administrative, HR, logistics work, and we transfer those resources to frontline policing, where there's a greater demand for police presence in the streets and townships and communities to serve and protect and reassure citizens. That's
a positive. Are you concerned about a culture clash, about assimilation problems? Because I know you're a man who has your ear to the ground. You would have heard that not everybody, rank and file, is happy about this.
I tell you, my ears are on the ground, and I have done the soundings all around the country, and I have not come across anybody who is so unhappy with the idea of merger that they are not willing to cooperate in the execution of a government policy. I think most of the members of the ISCF embrace the idea of joining with the regulars to form a larger, stronger, more professional body of men and women who can really protect and serve this country. I have had regular meetings with the officer corps of both forces, in fact, as recent as Friday last, when we discussed the merger at length. And every person who was in that meeting gave their full support and backing for the merger and pledged to ensure a seamless transition from two forces to one.
All right.
Where we expect the greatest benefit is in the increased levels of deployment on the front line, in the stations, in the districts, in the communities where...
What increased level are you expecting you'll be able to put out on the streets?
If you take, for example, the headquarters units in Kingston between Armand Barracks and those persons at Darling Street and manning the Supreme Courts, etc., we are looking at well over 500, 600 people.
Additional people.
If you take the formations in the areas and division across the country, we are seeing significant infusion into territorial commands so that all the resources that are now in the ISCF can be better aligned with the strategic priorities of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Because we're one force, one jurisdiction, one set of laws, serving one public. There's really no need for division. Let's
go to another question from a member of the public for the police commissioner, and this question now coming up. Again on Facebook, Romario says, are the body cameras that people are going to be wearing, will that be getting some of the bad cops, you think, out of the force?
I'm not introducing body cameras to focus on bad cops only. I'm introducing body cameras to enhance police efficiency and to validate reports, some of them accusations made against the police out there, and to also enable the police to do proper evidence gathering as they operate in the fields. The research, we've looked at research done in several parts of the world which have shown that the introduction of body cameras have enhanced police image, police efficiency, enhanced the relationship between citizens and the police, and have actually resulted in a sharp drop in complaints against the police by members of the public. They have been very helpful to the police as well in, refuting unfounded allegations and in preparing good evidence for criminal trials. Body cameras are not the only solution. There are other options that we are pursuing as well, less lethal options, which, a combination of all of these should see improved professionalism in law enforcement. But the public will have to understand too that we are going to be able to capture more and better evidence of criminal wrongdoing out there in public space and be able to take action against it, against the individuals responsible.
So if I could summarize, your answer is yes, but that's not the only reason.
Yes, but that's not the only reason.
Okay, let's go to our final comment from a member of the public. Our final question, I should say, for Police Commissioner Owen Ellington from one of our viewers.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner Owen Ellington, I would like to know why are our policemen so disrespectful? They treat us as if we are not human and as if they don't have parents or brothers or sisters, and I would like something to be done about that. Please and thank you, sir.
Let's acknowledge that the question wouldn't apply to every single member of the force. So let's get that out of the way. But having said that, we actually got several questions asking the same thing. Why don't we get treated better by members of the force? What are you going to do to increase the respect with which?
It's the same reason why we are having a difficulty dealing with criminals who victimize citizens in Jamaica. People are just unwilling to come forward, file the complaints and follow up on investigations. I mean, just before coming here today, I had a file on my desk of some very serious misconduct on the part of a policeman. We took the time to investigate, and we were hoping to be able to take this matter before the criminal court so we could, have the guy convicted and maybe, sent to prison. And the complainant just simply backed off. I am no longer interested. And this is what happens in so many cases across the country regularly. The only solution to that is for citizens to complain. And when you complain, you follow up those complaints with written statement, and you follow up to ensure that whether it's an internal disciplinary inquiry or a criminal court, that you are there to give evidence so we can secure convictions. Other than that, the individuals who commit wrongdoing will just do it and get away. I have been able to remove from the constabulary over 500 individuals. And most of those persons, I removed them because we did internal review of sick leave, poor conduct, inefficiencies, and all of those things, and we refused them permission to re-enlist.
I have to wrap up.
Very,
let me
very
just
few
ask.
Cases.
Let me just ask very,
Yes,
very quickly, though.
yes.
When you speak about people unwilling to go forward,
Yes.
do you yourself or the force, do you investigate to ensure it's not just unwillingness, but
Yes.
fear? In other words,
It's
could
not
some of these
fair.
people have been threatened and therefore don't want to go forward? Is that something the force
Jamaicans
looks
are
at?
not afraid of the police.
Really, Mr.
No.
Ellington? Mr.
Let me give you an
Ellington,
example.
say that for me.
I am
Say
telling
that
you.
for me and tell me you mean that.
I am telling you that Jamaicans are not afraid of police. They will say anything about the police on TV, in the newspaper.
Not specific?
They call names.
You cause police generally?
No, they will do it. But when it comes to supporting a process to ensure that the policemen who are accused are treated fairly at a trial, whether internally or externally, they back down.
I have to leave it there. You should have said that at the beginning of the program. We could have explored it. Thanks so much, the Police Commissioner Owen Ellington, for talking to us in this special one-on-one All Angles. Remember to check out our website, televisionjamaica.com. Go to the All Angles page. The program will be posted there. Watch it again. Share the link. Until next time, for everybody here at TVJ, I'm Dionne Jackson-Miller. Thank you so much for watching.